Let us pray. I serve a risen Savior. He's in the world today. He lives. He lives. Salvation to impart. You ask me now, I know He lives. He lives within my heart. Open our hearts in prayer, dear Lord, and come to us in your understanding love. When all around us seems dark and uncertain, when our faith is low and we cannot feel you near, we even find it hard to pray. Come to us then, dear Lord, as you came to your disciples in the darkest hour of the night. Let the light of your presence dispel our fears, renew our trust, and bring peace to our hearts. For your tender mercy's sake. Amen. Let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Friday, 20th February 2026 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 31st of March 2026 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour the Speaker. Messages from His Excellency the President, petitions, papers, government notices, private members notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Civil Aviation Bill 2026.
Question that the aforementioned bill be read here first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Suspension, Simon. Suspension. D.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those who are members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 2. In the name of the Honourable Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, to move the second reading of the Older Persons Care and Protection Bill 2026.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Mr. Speaker, I have to ask you before you say good morning to the good staff of the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, ably led by the Permanent Secretary, of course, and all the technocrats. A pleasant good morning to all Barbadians. But before I go into my speech, I just want to ask you to protect this young minister today, because the drollery I'm hearing from my colleagues when they indicate that something is about to happen that is special and epic. So, Mr. Speaker, and I was walking up these steps, which will be transformed shortly with our new legislation that would permit us to make Parliament more inclusive for persons with disability. One of my colleagues told me that he finds it strangely ironic that the first bill that I will be doing in this House, this August chamber, is a bill that only represents people in empowerment, but those who are in the twilight of their years. But I want to remind him and all those who are in earshot that rather than strangely ironic, I would say, on the contrary, it is the alignment of the perfect stars. Mr. Speaker, and we only have to go back if I want to really speak about the value of those who would have passed the age of 65. You could only look at what has been immortalized in song, and you can go back to the song by the Hawk himself, age is just a number. And if you go a little further, I may just say there's something left in the bottle. But I want to go now to my good friend, section Ray Plastic by himself, when he said that something is happening. And I want to declare today that something has been happening for the elderly in this country since 2018. I want to commend the minister who led the charge back then, the past member for the constituency on the heart of Barbados, St. Thomas, and the immediate past minister, my colleague from St. Michael's South, the MP for St. Michael's South, the Honourable Kurt Humphrey, for doing an excellent job to ensure that something happened that would improve the value of the lives of persons who would have served this country with aplomb over decades ago and will continue to serve, because we believe that there's nothing better as it relates to how we treat to these people, that to ensure that we have the mechanisms and the empowerment tools to secure their futures. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this legislation has been long in coming. It is a legislation that has really and truly, in my mind, passed the overdue process. And there is no better time than the right time to do the right thing. Today we are going to do the right thing to improve, enhance, as the bill refers to care and protect the lives of the elderly in this country. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, When I say the lives of those in this country, in order for us as a government to pass what I would often refer to as the moral litmus test, we must pass the test as it relates to the care and protection of our elderly population. And when we refer to the older persons legislation and bill, I just want to, as a disclaimer, let persons in Barbados who are past 65 years old recognize that older is not a statement which seeks to denigrate any category of persons. It's basically a term that is used not only in our local sphere, but internationally as well. So first up, let me say that older bill, the older persons bill, is recognized as the language used not only in our sphere, but in our international community. Mr. Speaker, we have done a lot since 2018. And it would be remiss of me not to signal some of the things that we have done and the things that we intend to do so that the lives of those who have contributed immensely to Barbados, so that those lives could be given the value, the care, love, and attention that they truly deserve. And Mr. Speaker, you would have heard, like most Barbadians, about our home health program where we have over 400 persons responsible across the length and breadth of the geographic space of Barbados, 166 square miles, if you understand maths a little better than myself, responsible for cooking, cleaning, hygiene, and support for persons who operate in that senior homes and in those spaces. Mr. Speaker, must I go on a little further to tell you that the Community Elder Care Program, where community members, persons from within the community who have a sense of philanthropy, a sense of care, love, and appreciation, could provide substantive care for persons by providing companionship and stimulation exercises and programs for seniors in their own spaces, in their own homes. The rehabilitative services that we offer using the nursing support services, the senior recreational activity program, which is a weekly program that encourages socialization and wellness as part of their activities. The Vauxhall Seniors Village, the improvements thereof, which provide independent and assisted living for seniors, for which recent major works were done under Minister Mike, the MP for the good constituency of St. Michael South, who work assiduously to ensure that that the seniors in this country not only have a voice, but a physical space where they can live the Barbadian dream and enjoy their lives. The Lancaster House, which houses displaced seniors due to unfortunate emergency circumstances, that also underwent major refurbishment. You can give the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South a round of applause, because I think that this is really good work on behalf of the seniors in this country. The Joyce Dunner Senior Day Care Center that was only closed due to COVID, I must say that it is scheduled now once again for major renovations by one of our philanthropic groups. And it's supposed to be a temporary housing unit for our homeless population, especially those who are over 65. The National Conversation on Aging and Elderly Affairs, the narrative started in 2020. And in 2021, we declare, as part of the United Nations Declaration on Healthy Aging, that Barbados by 2030 must be part of that decade of conversation as it relates to improving those persons who would have contributed immensely to the development of Barbados. A very important part of the conversation. We also commissioned the client service centers and the surveyor by the former National Assistance Board, Welfare Department and Disability Unit, which identified our gaps to enhance our service, and therefore, after those surveys were done, we took the necessary action. We reorganized the national scene. Again, I must tell you that I met with the active players involved in our senior games, and at the meeting, coming out the meeting yesterday, it was decided that based on what happened in terms of the chronological events across the international sphere, that those games will take place in September of this year, which will be followed by the games that are held in Utah, Utah, and that those persons who would have performed commendably would be allowed with government's help to be part of those overseas and international meets. That is a commitment from this government. We had our meetings because we recognize that healthy aging also involves, for most part, the physical aspects, not only eating, but allowing persons to be physically fit, and so that they would have healthy body, mind, spirit, and all those good things that associate with wholesomeness. I want, Mr. Speaker, to say that the meeting was a very productive one, and we are looking forward to a slew of activities that would involve dominoes, hockey as we call it. We have golf as part of the whole games, and all the activities that you could think about that the elderly or the older persons in this country would have come to us and say they want these games to be part of our senior and our national event. This is what we are doing, Mr. Speaker, because we are a government who, of course, listen to our people, and then we respond accordingly. It is not the other way around. Mr. Speaker, the care of the older adult in the community program, another program designed to strengthen community-based elder care with plans for national rollout. This program is in collaboration with the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology and is overseen, of course, by the Special Advisor on our Elderly Affairs, who every single person in Barbados, especially in St. Thomas, know as Ms. Cynthia Ford. The increase in amounts of vouchers and grants, as well as other kinds of assistance given through the former Welfare Department, now the Social Empowerment Agency. You would have heard it being exposed in our budget that we were going to increase our grants. We are not only thought the talk in this case, but we are now walking the walk and doing the do on behalf of the good people in our country, especially those who are now not only in their silver years, but must I permit my tongue to say the golden years of their life. The provision of ramps and other assistive devices through the former disability unit now this year. You would have heard me said already, only recently, last week or so, that there is a new project on the horizon. It started under the former minister, who is the Member of Parliament for St. Michael's South, and this project, of course, is the Access for All, where we are looking at to audit all government buildings first, and then we are looking at the private sector to have all accessible and inclusive Barbados for persons irrespective of disabilities, age, etc., etc. That is the mandate of this government. And we have said, I made a commitment that we are going to start with Parliament, because in my view, and I will repeat again and again, I hope my colleagues can ditto what I'm saying, is that it must start at home. It must start the place where legislation is brought to bear. You cannot have a project being rolled out across Barbados for persons with disabilities, and the place which is responsible for ensuring that the legislation is enacted is not equally accessible. And this anomaly must be corrected post haste. And that's what I said from the inception, that the project must start with Parliament. And that's what you would have seen when you came into the precincts that there are 2 big disabled parkings, fully colored in blue, with the wheelchairs sign on it, and we started with that, but we already have the drawings, thanks to the Clerk of Parliament, so that we can start making the changes necessary to accommodate those persons with disability and, of course, our elderly population. That is a firm commitment from this minister and this government, and it is going to be the start of the access for our project where we go across all the government buildings, including schools, to make those spaces more accessible, not only for persons with disability, but our elderly population as well. Recognizing, of course, that how we treat these people will pretty much determine the future of our country. This is important work, and I look forward to the officers working with all sweat expenditure to ensure that this becomes a reality. We had a suite of legislation in this same Parliament. The Rights of Persons with Disability, I just spoke of that, and the Social Empowerment Act 2025, led by the Member of Parliament for St. Michael's South. The construction of a model residential and respite care facility and daycare center at Sterling. When this facility is finished, Mr. Speaker, sir, it will be considered one of the most pristine facility for the care of the elderly and our young people in Barbados, without a doubt. A facility like never before, where we are looking at persons with dementia. There's a special center for that. Assisted independent living facilities. A children's daycare service is also planned for this facility so that we can have the intergenerational link that is so sadly lacking in Barbados. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, it is not only about big fancy buildings for us. It is about ensuring that when those buildings are put up, that the value of life for persons who operate within those spaces, that the value is improved to an extent that Barbadians can look forward to living those years, those twilight beautiful years, with dignity, peace, tranquility, and with the type of care, love, and attention that they deserve. And that is part of our basic needs approach to government, providing those simple basic things to make those persons who would have contributed and built this country, that we are, to ensure that their lives are made better, because that is what we are here for, to improve the lives of our constituents and to ensure that there's better living for our people. You could put the acronym to that, Mr. Speaker, sir. But we have 2 more facilities planned in the immediate future. One in St. Thomas, of course, and St. George, respectively, with the intention of eventually planting such a facility in each parish. So the plan is to have one of these same type facilities, maybe smaller, in each parish, so that we can have the day release facilities for both children, for the elderly, where the family can drop off their loved ones and collect on evenings. Those type of facilities that may not be fully residential, but is able to offer assistance for those families in Barbados. The days, Mr. Speaker, where abandonment, neglect, those words that tarnish the good reputation of our country, the reputation of families in Barbados. This is not who we are as a country at all. This whole concept of granny dumping, I have never heard it sound like something that dropped out the troposphere. Never heard. And all of a sudden has become part of the Bajan vernacular and dialogue. This is not who we are as a country. And I'm saying abhorrently that this can never become part of the Bajan conversation. Granny dumping, where you leave your mother, your father, your uncle, someone close to you, in the hospital at the accident emergency, and you sneak in a car, put at high speed, faster than Usain Bolt himself, and will go and run away and leave the person there in the hospital so that the government could be responsible for the care. How did it come to this? How did the family structure? We understand that sometimes because of dementia, Alzheimer's, and other illnesses, that is a hard task to be able to care, and some persons may not be equipped. But oftentimes, based on the conversations I'm having with the officers, there are families who are fit, who are able, and who have the capacity to take care of their loved ones who are simply not doing it. The love, the care, the appreciation, and the attention that would normally happen from building families just is not there, unfortunately. And it's unfortunate that we are at this juncture today in our parliamentary life, over 300 years, where we are now saying that legislation must be the enforcement mechanism for something that we would appreciate over the years. It's pretty natural to me. Taking care of my mother is a natural phenomenon. I would not fathom, I can't, how it would require a government to intervene for a person to have to take care of their loved ones. I can't fathom it. I don't know how it's possible. In my world, it is not possible in my headspace. But I don't know how it's possible, because that is what we are seeing nowadays in Barbados. It's a cultural paradigm that is just not acceptable. And a lot of the responsibility now falls on the state. And I want to thank those NGOs, Barbados Association of Retired Persons, BARP, and all those persons who are fighting daily on behalf of those persons who are being neglected, traumatized, abused, for whatever reason, because this must not be the norm in this country that we live in, that we call Barbados. In the third decade of the 21st century, there is no way that this minister, young as he is, should be standing here, although I'm enjoying every moment of it. Every single chamber of my heart is being filled as I speak. Although that, and albeit the fact that I'm enjoying it, there's no way that I should be here today bringing legislation to protect and care for our elderly population. Unheard of, should never be, not the way how we were raised. And it shows, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we now have to go back to first principles in terms of the way how we treat to our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, and our family. Because what we are seeing here is, unfortunately, as a small microcosm, because we're speaking about the elderly. But when you juxtapose that with what is happening in the wider society, we know that it's not only the elderly that this is happening to. It's happening to our children. It's happening to those persons with disabilities. And unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, this illness, I will call it that, has permeated the length and breadth of Barbados. And as I speak in Parliament, I heard just only recently this morning that there was a shooting incident near one of their nurseries in Silver Sands. So when I spoke earlier about the breakdown in society and how we get here, the reflection is what is happening outside. It is a situation, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, where there seems to be a lack of respect, irrespective of when it comes to the way how we treat to our children, those with disabilities, or the elderly. There is just an unfortunate lack of respect, lack of love, lack of care, lack of empathy, and lack of the basic tenets needed to ensure that Barbados becomes and continue to be the Barbados where it is recognized as a beacon of the Caribbean. That is our mandate as a government, to ensure that miscreant behavior, irrespective of it affects us in a social way, psychological way, emotive way, that those persons, very few maybe in our society, that is seeking to disrupt ordinary lives, that behavior becomes a thing of the past as it relates to our society. And that is why I said earlier that one of the programs that we have is to have an intergenerational linkage program between those who are in the twilight of their years, over 65, and those young people who are impressionable, who would require that that they call big brother, big sister, and big uncle, and big mommy, love and affection and care and guidance, because I think that is what is sadly lacking in this country. So the elderly, albeit that we are having problems with abuse and neglect and abandonment, I think that they have tremendous value to add to the whole upliftment of our country, and to allow those elderly persons, and I know I said earlier that the former member of Parliament for St. Thomas would lead that charge, but she has her work cut out, because that intergenerational program we are talking about must be a program that will cause the change needed to stop a lot of the miscreant behavior that is happening across this country. We can't continue like that, and there is an oasis of knowledge with our elder population that we think needs to be tapped into in order to ensure that the young generation survive the test of times. The days, the conversations about working hard, diligence, hard work, selflessness, the conversations about empathy, about caring, about love, those conversations must be rekindled in this country, in our little spaces, in our homes. The elderly in our homes must be respected and equally must be allowed to share those moments, those lived experiences. There is nothing that beats lived experience. Nothing. We can't read it in a book. You can't go on Google and speak about an experience, what it feels to cut cane and get up 5 o'clock in the morning to do it. That can't be part of our internet space. It can't be part of our internet space if the conversation surrounds the milking of animals, or they can't know that we goat and sheep on morning, or they taking care of the pigs. You can't go on the iPad or the iPhone 17 that young children I see walking around the place with the iPhone 17 that costs $2,500 and going to school. You cannot have that lived experience on a cell phone. You cannot have the experience where you bring water from a standpipe on morning from a cell phone, unfortunately. And when you go to church and Sunday school on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever day you recognize as your religious day, that personal one-on-one with the pastors and elders of the church cannot happen when you press the button on a cell phone. Unfortunately, it can't. So I'm saying that that intergenerational link must now become part of the Bayesian conversation if we are going to have the change that is necessary, because we believe that Barbados can punch above our weight. Not because it was said by a former United Nations Secretary General, not because of that, but because based on what we have seen over the years, we know that Barbados can punch a bit above its weight. We know that Barbados has the true potential to do that. We saw it with our athletes, and thanks to the Member of Parliament for St. John, who has, based on performance, gone on record as being one of the best sports ministers that Barbados ever experienced. Look at the results. Those results show you that young people with guidance and given the wherewithal can achieve anything under the sun, under the beautiful sun and sea of Barbados. That's what it shows. But there must be an intergenerational link, a linkage with those older persons in the communities where they are able to impart the lived experiences. This is critical to the development of the country, and that is why this program is so important to me, and that's why I feel so passionate about it. Because if it's one thing that can cause the shift in maladaptive behavior patterns, is the knowledge and guidance from those who would have experienced all aspects of life before. So, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to this program. The widening of the band of persons eligible for disability grants, something that was done only recently by the Member of Parliament of Christchurch East Central. Increase in old age pensions, both contributory and non-contributory. The increase, only done recently. This is what we have been doing since 2018 for those persons who I would continue to say have contributed immensely to this country, Barbados. The recently introduced cost of living cash credit, which would give persons $100 grant per month for a period of 12 months. The solidarity allowance, which provided for $300. Now, which government under the sun that you would have experienced did as much as we have done since 2018? Increase in budget allocations to senior services under the former National Assistance Board and now SIA. Increase again. The care and wellness project in the community, bringing for care to older persons in the community. Now, this is really at the heartstring of the Prime Minister herself, where we recognize that amputations in this country are way above what is expected in less than 300,000 persons. And the amputation rate is, based on medical reports, it is above that which it really should be. And we have said, made a determination with the Ministry of Health, of course, that we must have a program of monitoring and evaluation, where we look at the early interventions needed to provide care for those persons who are over 65. And based on the screening that we would have done so far and how the project is being rolled out, those persons would have been given the necessary tests, HbA1c, etc., and screened by professional specialized nursing and put into various categories. Those who are high risk will go to the podiatrist. Those who want a normal basic care and wellness, where they'll be educated about foot care, given the nutritional and dietary advice. And then we would introduce those nail technicians who would have been trained up with our program so that they can go to individual homes and provide the foot care necessary so that people can have a sense of dignity in their older years. Because we believe that because you are, Mr. Speaker, sir, over 65, we believe that you can still be a fashionista if you want to be. The Member of Parliament of St. Thomas, former Member of Parliament of St. Thomas, when she entered this Hollow Chambers only a couple of months ago, the outfits that she wore, I think that she could model on any of the international modeling scenes that we have across the world, because she appreciated and understanding the good quality of dressing and looking beautiful. And she still looks beautiful, albeit that she's a little further from me than before. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have done our bidding and our part to ensure we bring a sense of dignity and enjoyment to the lives of persons over 65. The strengthening of ties with NGOs, providing subventions and, of course, other assistance to BARP, the Seroptimist groups, Barbados Alliance to End Homelessness, and the Alzheimer's Association, to name a few. They raised threshold for the income tax, which would ease a lot of persons over the age of 65. And we are presently working, thanks to Ms. Jacqueline Wilcher, who is doing the work in terms of the legislation on the lasting power of attorney, which is a piece of legislation that will give those older folk the ability to will their properties and to ensure that their legacy stays within the arm reach of which they would want and as part of their will, etc. That is what we are doing to ensure we protect the elderly, because we understand that there are a lot of nefarious persons who would have ventured and skirt around the abuse of elderly, even financial abuse, and that is something that we have a serious concern about. Mr. Speaker, we have done a lot, and it started in 2018. 2020, we acquiesced to the United Nations decade of healthy aging, because we believe that as a small, island developing state, that healthy aging must become part of the dialogue and the conversation. So we signed on to it, and we are following the mandate. In 2022 sometime, the former Minister for People Empowerment and Elder Affairs decided, and rightfully so, to have the conversation with all the active players, NGOs, you name it, sometime in June in 2022 or so. And he started that conversation because what informs legislation is policy. If you are following the basic tenets, you inform legislation with policy. And I must say that the policy was brought before Cabinet and exposed in the same Parliament by the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South in 2023, which is a policy that over 5 years would ensure that the lives of persons over 65 are sustained, and of course, that they are able to enjoy the full benefits of this country, Barbados, as we know it, the place that they would have built over the years. And this is a very important part of the conversation. The place that they would have built over the years. And we are going to ensure that this place, this sacred place called Barbados, is a home that they can enjoy even when they are faced with debilitating illnesses and conditions. That is our mandate as a government. And that is why this legislation is so important. So the policy spoke to all these things, from care, from wellness. It spoke to the whole issue of residential facilities and how we should treat the persons within those facilities. It spoke to the whole issue about family and how the family must connect with the elderly, the intergenerational connections. It spoke to all these things. And it's a policy, of course, which aligns itself with the international policy as it relates to the aging and ageism. This is what we have done as a government. The policy was approved by Parliament, and here today, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have the legislation, and the legislation that must now seek to ensure that those persons are empowered and that they have the security to be able to live the Barbadian dream. And Mr. Speaker, I would now go into the intricacies of the legislation, because my colleagues already told me that they suspect it will go for 4 hours, but the way how I feel about the elderly in Barbados, it may be a whole day for me. Mr. Speaker, I remember Parliament since Michael South is laughing. Part 1, if we go to part 1 swiftly of the legislation, it just speaks to the interpretation of and the definition of the older persons, the older care bill that I'm speaking of, and that those persons are in that age cohort are persons 65 and over. It speaks to the different terms and the definition of the various terms: abuse, what is caregiver, residential care facilities, and we have the clear definition of those things. Note that a residential care facility based on this legislation does not include a shelter as referred to under the disaster preparedness and management. which is understood to be a temporary accommodation provided for persons who are displaced by a hazard, disaster, or other such emergencies. This is not the shelter that is being referred to in this legislation, so I just want to make that disparity. In this part, which is section 3 of this legislation, the purpose is also stated that it's to protect our elderly from abuse, neglect, abandonment, and exploitation, whilst promoting dignity, autonomy, respect, and participation. I've said already that the elderly must be able to participate in every single thing that Barbados has to offer, and that's why the Sin Against will become a reality under my watch. In section 4 of the legislation, it binds the state, and of course we know that, we have said already that this is how we are going forward, because we believe that the state must carry the lead in terms of the fight for our elderly population. And this is nothing that will embarrass us as a government, because we believe that sometimes if you don't lead, no one follows, unfortunately. Albeit that we would like persons to walk at our side, because there's nothing better than to be walking on the same trajectory as it relates to achieving what we call principal goals. And this is a principal goal in terms of ensuring that the lives of our elderly are protected. Part 2 of the legislation deals with the rights, the dignity, and the non-discrimination of our elderly. And this part, it calls on the new social empowerment agency, and it says more specifically that they are mandated to oversee the implementation, with the minister, of course, tasked with formulating an interministerial committee to coordinate efforts across the various government bodies to ensure the policies and the responsibilities of this legislation are executed. And that is my first mandate, to have that committee in place. We know we have relationships with health, we have relationships with housing, because a lot of the issues come under the remit of housing. We have a lot of a relationship that I just spoke of with the Minister of Sportswear, where I will be having limited conversations as it relates to how we shape our Sin Against, so that we can get the ministry's mandate, which is the wellness and the protection and the inclusiveness of those seniors, along with the sporting aspect of it, where we know that those athletes can go on the world stage and win medals and bring home for Barbados, just like our juniors did over the last couple of weeks. And that is why we have to ensure that there's an interministerial connection on the side of the way. At section 7, of course, the general principles are emphasized for the administration, and the older persons are, so we can have the rights of those older persons and the entitlements being fleshed out in the legislation. We are going to ensure that there is dignity, respect, participation in the family and community life. That's what we said, that the family, there's a saying, and it was only recently articulated by Hillary Clinton, when she said, it takes a village to raise a child. But we'll go a little further. I'm going to extrapolate and go a little further, because it doesn't only take a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a child only if that village sees itself as a family. So I can go a little further. It takes a family to raise a child. Because if the village sees itself as a family, then the family will raise a child. So we now have to get those villages to see themselves as one big family. And my idea of gracing the countryside, St. Andrew more specifically, I am now, Mr. Speaker, when I say my dear, I can say so because I'm now a quinquagenarian. So I can say my dear. I can speak because based on BARC's regulations, I could qualify as a member of the elderly community. Mr. Speaker, you too, so long, small. But I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that the day when I was able, as an impressionable young man, to traverse the countryside, any person who met me once they were older could have input knowledge and give instructions once they were good. healthy instructions. And Mr. Speaker, you know the story. You had to follow. You had to follow those instructions. You had to say, yes, ma'am, no, please. So every single person was called an uncle and auntie and a godfather. That's why he said just now, a village can raise a child if the village sees itself as a family. So by extension, the family raising the child. That's what he said. And I will not swallow my words. I probably elasticize on it. A village can raise a child, yes. But that village equally must see itself as a big family raising that child. And there was respect across the board. And dare you to go home and tell your mother or father that old lady laying down the hill tell you to pull out your pants. Because if old lady Lane get to mommy or daddy before you, your pants will get pulled down with lids. That was the reality of the life that we face. And we were raised, and raised properly too, by this mantra, where every single body took responsibility for the children in the neighborhood. And I am saying this is where we have to go now, Mr. Speaker. Intergenerational needs. I will continue to repeat it ad nauseam. I will, because it makes sense in my head space. It does. Part 3 addresses service standards. And Section 9 outlines the guiding principles for provision of services. These include recognition of the social, cultural, and economic contribution of older persons, participation of older persons at all levels of the decision-making and the decision-making process, recognition of the multidimensional needs, the access to information through education and training, prevention of exploitation, respect for dignity, and ensuring that as far as reasonable, that practical services and facilities are accessible. And Mr. Speaker, I've said already that the training and training needs must not only be limited to our young people. I have a lady who is 83 years old who messaged me on WhatsApp. I won't tell Barbarians the type of conversations we're having. Please do. But she messaged me on WhatsApp, and we have good conversations. Very good conversations on WhatsApp, and she's on WhatsApp. And she knows about YouTube. And she enjoys Googling on the internet, and we talk about those Philodactylus pulchers, those cantropids, those lizards, and we talk about all those animals and things because that is what she likes. She likes National Geographic like myself. So we can talk about the reefs and the sargassum tracks and all sorts of different things, amongst other things. But we can have our conversation and we can speak for days because she understands how to use the internet and the computer and the different apps. She understands. And she knows about it. And she knows everything that's going on in Barbados, and she's 83 years old. Young 83 and understands everything. So training, technological training as part of the conversation, I would support 150% because we sometimes take it for granted that those persons who are past 65 years old don't have no appreciation for these technological things. I want to say that is the biggest myth in Barbados. They understand the digital sphere sometimes better than the young people. And they understand and appreciate the use of technology, robotics and all those things. So if they want to be part of the conversation, let us have the conversation with them. Let us provide the training so that they'll be au fait with all the technological advancements that this country is making. And that's what we are saying as part of this section, to give them the opportunities to be part of not only the technological space, but the decision-making space as it relates to their life. If they want to be involved in these things, let us provide the wherewithal so they could be. And that is the conversation that we are having with our elderly. Part 6 deals with the protection of older persons from abuse, neglect, abandonment, and exploitation. And it addresses the critical issues of abuse. And unfortunately, it has come to this, where this government now has to move apace to have legislation to protect our elderly from abuse. Now, abuse goes the whole spectrum. verbal abuse, psychological, sexual, physical, even pharmacological. And when I say pharmacological, I'm not saying so because it would take me back to my former vocation. Not because of that. But it is a lived reality for a lot of the elderly in this country. Where, because they may be restless, or because they have certain idiosyncrasies because of age being a factor, those persons in charge of their care will subject them to loads of medication. Loads of medication inadvertently, without justification, without medical justification. That is a dangerous form of abuse. And it happens, unfortunately, in Barbados. I see the Member of Parliament, who is a doctor by training, often said, Philip North, shaking her head with agreement to what I'm saying. It is a serious concern. My mother and my grandmother ain't going to sleep early enough. She keep a noise at night. She want me up because she's accustomed to playing music and listening to it's Heartbreak Hotel. Member of Parliament St. Thomas would tell me Heartbreak Hotel. That was by Patrick got it years ago. Heartbreak Hotel. So she listens to Heartbreak Hotel, but the noise from the radio upsetting the rest of the house. So we can give her some sleeping tablets. And you pelt through the razapam, and you want to have the appreciation that those 3 lorazepam or 4 lorazepam that you give her, because one ain't doing nothing. If you give you 2 in there, only since you sleep for an hour, so you put 4 lorazepams at the disposal, and you know the rest is history. That is the type of abuse I'm talking about when I speak of pharmacological abuse of our elderly. And it's something that is really of a concern for me personally, because I have seen it, as I said in my last vocation, and I seeing the nodding of the Member of Parliament for St. Philip North, and she's nodding in my direction, although I know she's not a contortionist, she nods in my direction. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are the lived realities of the elderly in this country. It's unfortunate that I'm having this conversation, and emotionally so, because we should be here. I should not be having a conversation where I'm bringing a bill to stop persons from doing all these things to those who built our country, those who are allowing the younger persons the opportunity to enjoy and live a free life in Barbados, and sometimes being involved in miscreant behavior. It is these persons over 65 who made the contribution, who by the sweat of their brow, who endure the torture and hard work, who understand the whole true meaning of sweat and expenditure and unequivocal sinew. They understand these terms because that was their lived reality through the years, working hard by achieving things. Not going through any window and stealing or popping chains at night or anything. So that was not their part of their conversation. Never. They work hard. Hard work, discipline, empathy, selflessness. Those were the tenets that build this society. And I'm saying that it's unfortunate that I'm here to discuss these things. The bill defines abuse broadly. I just went through it. It speaks of neglect, abandonment, and financial exploitation. Now, this is a serious thing in Barbados. I'm sure you, at some point, Mr. Speaker, would have heard stories of elderly persons being financially abused. You would have heard it. Where persons come in to their personal spaces to get whether it's a pension checks, to find out which bank they're banking at, get them to sign off on whatever. Sometimes they're oblivious to what they did, thinking that the person is genuine in their efforts. And lo and behold, Couple of months, sometimes they only take. And then they find that they are absolutely broke and now have to depend on the state to provide that lifeline. And I'm saying that it's unfortunate because it is the truth. It is a true reality and lived reality for some of our elderly, where persons prey on them financially for their hard-earned money and investments. And this legislation that I'm bringing today, Mr. Speaker, sir, will speak to that. And it says, if you read part 4, and it says specifically that persons who commit such acts can face fines of up to $100,000 or imprisonment or both. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat. If you are caught and found guilty, you're a lawyer, you'll be able to advise me. You're caught and you're found guilty of committing any of these offenses, abuse, psychologically, emotionally, or otherwise, neglect, abandonment, and financial exploitation, you can face fines of up to $100,000, imprisonment, or both. Let the message go out to whoever it may concern. A word to the wise. Caregivers, family members, and institutions may also be held accountable, which means it's also putting government on notice because we provide care. So if we are not vigilant enough and these things happen on our care, then we have to account like anybody else. That is what the legislation is saying. So no one is immune from the legislation and the penalty, and rightfully so. Because once the person is under our care, we have a duty and a mandate to protect them. So the legislation is far-reaching, and rightfully so. It also, at Section 8:12, spells out the reporting and investigation obligations, while introducing mandatory reporting where abuse or neglect is known. It is now part of this legislation. It is now part of the whole conversation that once abuse or neglect is known, that persons must mandatory report. And the persons that I'm speaking of more specifically are the duty bearers, Mr. Speaker, sir. It includes health professionals. Well, after the doctor does an examination and realizes that there's some form of abuse, that doctor, that nurse, or whoever, or if the pharmacist believe that there is, based on the frequency and the amount of medication being dispensed to persons, that there's some form of pharmacological abuse, that healthcare professional has a duty to report that abuse to the authorities. Contact the police and report that abuse. This legislation speaks to hospital administrators, social workers and social service professionals, law enforcement officers, telecommunications service providers. If they are part of the whole telecommunications conversation, they go and they see something was repairing a phone or whatever, and they're repairing a computer and they see something that speaks to a level of abuse to an elderly person, they are duty bound to report it because the legislation says that. So a person who provides health care, welfare, education, religious care, or law enforcement services wholly or partly to an older person, a person over 65, are duty bound to report. Report it. If there's any form of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. That's what the legislation says. Any other person who, by virtue of the nature of their work, it may be one of the care workers that we have in the community. Maybe a maid in the hospital. She sees something that goes on the threshold of abuse. She has a duty to report to the nurse. This morning I saw such and such person came in here to look at their mother, and I saw her pinch or slap her because she was pulling at the bandage or whatever, and I see her pinch the mother, or she had a lighter, a hot lighter, and I saw her put it on the mother. Those types of things, the maid should report as well, because these things happen. I'm not speaking because I had a whimsical experience somewhere in the thermosphere. I am speaking because I hear these things, and I have been inundated with them for the last 2 months, albeit that I am still in my nascent stage at the ministry. I hear these things on a daily basis. These are the things that are happening in our society, and that's why this legislation is here, to be able to negate a lot of these things. Mr. Speaker, sir, by section 12(7), duty bearers who fail to report this incident can be fined up to $10,000. Can be fined up to $10,000. Please also note, Mr. Speaker, that the reports can be made anonymously. You don't have to identify yourself if you don't want to, because of fear of retaliation. We know how that's going in our society, or victimization. You can say that you see something happening, go off a private phone and make the call, do whatever you have to do, because that in the anonymous report will also be given the same visual acuity as any other report. The authorized officers are empowered. These are the officers that are empowered to investigate, enter premises, interview relevant persons, and assess care and living conditions. And at section 12(8), there's protection from prosecution from anyone who reports in good faith. Which means if you report something in good faith, even if after the investigations, your report, they find that the report was not entirely correct based on what you saw, you don't have to have the fear of the police coming and arrest you and prosecuting you later on, because you report based on what you thought happened and what you saw. That's all we are saying. The investigations will be carried out, and then a determination is made if the person will be charged, yes or no. Section 13 speaks to the removal of an older person to a place of safety. In this regard, the SEA, or the Social Empowerment Agency, by their representative, which is a social worker, a police officer, shall, with the consent of an older person, or where the older person is incapable of giving that consent, remove an older person from his place or residence and place him in a safe place without an order from the court, where there is knowledge or grounds reasonable to suspect that the older person is in need of immediate care and protection, or what we will call emergency protection, or that we believe that the delay in obtaining an order of the court for the removal of the older person will jeopardize that person's care and life. So this is to protect, again, the safety and welfare of older persons in this country. Or if we believe that the removal of the older person from his place of residence is necessary to secure the safety and the well-being, the welfare of that older person. We may go into a facility and find that because we would actually don't off the roof, that any moment the roof can cave in. We may find rat droppings, and we get a call from the officers from the Ministry of Health and says, get that person from there immediately. There's a situation like leptospirosis or vermin-borne disease, borne disease could affect that person. We have to move with alacrity to get that person from there, and this is what the legislation allows: immediate action from the officers, and they give the list of officers who has the power. The list. Additionally, a person with responsibilities for an older person may apply to the court for an order to remove the older person from his place of residence to a safe place where the person has knowledge or reasonable grounds to believe that the individual, the older person, is in need of care and protection. In this regard, the older person may be held in a safe place for a period not exceeding 6 months. So if it's not immediate, you can go before the court, and we expect a judgment within 14 days, where the court can make the determination that the older person is best for the older person for their care and safety to be placed in a facility. And we have said initially that for the first 6 months, and then afterwards we will review to find out if there are any other facilities or any other family members that would be willing to take care of that elderly person. An elderly person may be placed in a safe facility for a period exceeding 6 months where the agency has been unable to find a permanent place for that older person. And such a period may be reviewed intermittently by the court based on the information being gathered on a daily basis and as I said, the interactions with family, etc. Section 40 mandates the seer to establish and maintain a register of abuse. That is Section 14, a register of abuse, with the following details: the name, address, telephone number of the older person in need of care and protection, the nature of the abuse to which the older person in need of care and protection was subjected to, the time, date, and location of the abuse to which the older person in need of care and protection was subjected to, the name and address and telephone number of the alleged perpetrator, the name, address, and telephone number of the caregiver, relative, or friend of the older person in need of care and protection, and any other information which the agency, which is SEER, deems fit for the purposes of completion of the register. By Section 14, the agency is also mandated to keep the particulars recorded in the register of abuse confidential, which means that each and every single person in public domain, in public space, can't go walk off the streets and go and see a register. This register will be kept in a locked safe, and only persons mandated by the SEER, which is the executive director, persons ordered by the court, or persons given the authority by law could open this register if need be. Disclosure of the details by anyone who has the legal authority to see this register, disclosure of those details could attract a penalty of up to $10,000. So if you have information that you saw in the register, persons who would have been responsible for inflicting abuse, and you go on any of these social media or whatever, tell a friend, and it is not kept to yourself, your wholesome self, your whole self, and nothing but yourself, then you could pay the court $10,000 if found guilty. That is as simple as it gets in terms of the English language. Up to $10,000 if found guilty. So you have a duty to keep it to yourself, that which you see, or that which you saw in the register. Section 15 sets out the procedure by which the court can issue an appropriate emergency care and protection order for the relief of an older person and the considerations to be taken into that account. These include the need for family or special care, and special care is defined under Section 15.7, which is the care specialized health care, which may involve physical, cognitive, mental, and of course this will require professional support, specialist professional support to administer that special care. Yes. The member parent for St. Thomas, he requires special care with our computer too. It must however be noted that by section 15.6, he took special care of the computer. It must however be noted that by section 15.6, an emergency order so made shall have effect only for 14 days, although an extension may be sought for another 14 days. So if there's an emergency order where the person must be taken because of special care, it will have effect for 14 days. And if you want to extend that 14 days because we recognize that the person is in need of more specialized professional help, then we can go to the court and ask for it to be extended for another 14 days. That is the legislation. Part 5, emergency protection and safeguards. This section deals with older persons who face immediate risk, and in order to be able to protect and safeguard them, we are saying in this section that the authorities, again, the authorities speak specifically about persons related to SIA, police, or any person mandated by the court. The authorities can remove the person from danger and arrange emergency care or accommodation. The safeguards ensure actions are proportionate and respect dignity and the rights of that person. In part 5, the legislation deals with places of safety. And by section 16, the minister in times of emergency may designate such appropriate safe spaces. I want to repeat that. In times of emergencies, safe spaces may have to be created because of hurricanes, natural disasters, and we may have to make the determination of those spaces. And for those purposes, as in emergency response, and we saw that the legislation gives the minister that authority to designate safe spaces based on the immediacy of the response needed. He may also revoke such designations as he or she sees fit. Section 17 addresses the unlawful removal of vulnerable people from persons from places that are considered safe, and the relevant fines are prescribed in section 17, and that is something that I think that persons can do read up on. Part 6, residential facilities. The bill establishes minimum standards for facilities caring for older persons, including licensing, inspection, monitoring, and enforcement to ensure safe, humane, and respectful care environments. As the population ages, of course, there will be greater demand for long-term care and residential facilities. Part 6 focuses on residential facilities for older persons. The legislation stipulates mandatory training for caregivers, including those in home-based and institutional settings. It also provides at section 18 for the registration and regulation of residential facilities which are classified as type 1 or type 2. And you will know that type 1, if you read the legislation a little further, that type 1 speaks to those facilities that offer health-related care, which are specialist facilities for medical care, and type 2 may include either type 1 facilities and facilities that render care, whether it is medical or non-medical. So that is the basis for that differentiation between type 1 and type 2, where type 1 deals with medical care. The classification of residential facilities is prescribed in the schedule, as I said, when you read the legislation, and it details the standard operational procedures for these facilities. It speaks about the management and the rights of residents within this facility, and we have said already that the residents will have residential type committees which will be formed in the residence facilities where We have persons, residents, their representatives, and persons from the ministry sitting as part of the committee to be able to ensure that the rights and the safety and protection of older persons are realized. Rights and regulations are comprehensively covered at Section 19, including access to personal possessions, participation in social and recreational activities, privacy and timely notices for transfers or discharge. We are saying that we must bring persons in as part of the conversation in a holistic way as it relates to the right and access to their personal possessions, the right and access to have social activities in a non-discriminatory way, the right for them to have recreational type facilities, because we believe that balancing the humors is an important dimension as it relates to holistic living and wholesome living. So we are encouraging persons to be involved in recreational type activities as the physical need allows. Guidance is also given for non-discriminatory admission to facilities. You can't discriminate when you are admitting persons. For instance, my colleagues would know that if they call me, Mr. Speaker, and ask for a person to be placed in a facility, that the social worker would do all the due diligence in ensuring that that person passed the threshold, that there's no other family member, that there's no other facility, that the person is at the wit's end, basically, as it relates to finding facilities, and then we can incorporate them. So there is not one rule for any specialized individual or specialized group. Section 20 prescribes a mandatory offering of services for all residential facilities. So there is a basic level of servicing that we will offer for any residential facilities that we won't deviate from, despite the location of the facilities, the type of facility it is, the type of building it is. That has nothing to do with the mandatory basic needs approach to every single facility that we will be facilitating. And it's specifically to the 24-hour need, because those residential facilities must be manned 24 hours a day. And we are saying that we are going to ensure that the staffing is there, that the specialist staffing is also there to be able to facilitate persons with special needs, because we understand that as person age, that they will require certain special needs that probably a younger person may not. And this is a reality that we are faced with, and we say that we are going to ensure that, that we have the basic standards that we are not going to deviate from, but along with that, we are going to include other optional services based on the not only geographical space available, but the physical layout of the facilities. And these other services may include rehabilitation services, respite care services, counseling services to residents and family members, because we believe that family members must be part of any conversation when we have a resident in our facilities. Public education on aging, very important, outreach programs, the training of volunteers as caregivers, sport and recreational activities, I spoke about them earlier, the provision of beds for the temporary accommodation of vulnerable adults, assisted living services, which provide accommodation, care and support services for older persons with special needs, and of course, independent living services, which provides safe and accessible accommodation to older persons. So all of these are things that we are doing along with the basic services to ensure that once the opportunity arises, that we can provide these other additional services, what we call the optional services, as part of our menu. Section 21 deals with registration of residential facilities. A person who wishes to operate a residential facility shall apply to the Minister for registration to do so, and the Minister may refuse to register the residential facility, register the residential facility subject to such conditions as she may determine, and direct the applicant be issued a temporary certificate of registration stating the conditions, or C, register the residential facility. Where a residential facility is registered, the certificate must be prominently displayed on the premises at all times. You must have the certificate like all other businesses, because this is not only for a residential facility, I think this is across Barbados, where if you are registered with VAT, that VAT certificate must be displayed prominently. If you're registered with any association, your qualification, etc., all those things must be displayed in full view of the public so that they will have no questions being asked about the legitimacy of your business. And that's what you're saying. In addition, provision is made under Section 22 for a residence committee. I spoke about that earlier. As outlined in the bill, residential facilities must operate under a licensing regime with periodic inspections by qualified inspectors to ensure compliance. And this Section 25 grants the powers to these inspectors to investigate allegations, seize documents, and enforce standards through warrants issued by magistrates if necessary. Provisions is also made for revocation of registration of residential facilities. And I said before, we are very serious about ensuring that these facilities remain safe havens for older persons. And at Section 26, an offense is created where a person hinders or obstructs an inspector from carrying out his duty, refuse to give the inspector access to the premises, or comply with an instruction or direction or directive given from an inspector. That person who refuses or do all these things I spoke about just now can be given a fine of up to $10,000 or to imprisonment of a term of 12 years or both. So if you are struck an officer, if you give him false document, if you fail to allow him into your premises, if you curse and misbehave and threaten the officer, all those things, you can be subject via the court, the law court, the magistrate's court, to appear, and if you're found guilty, you can be given a fine of up to $10,000, a term of imprisonment of 12 years, which is the
12 months, Honourable.
12 months, sorry. Against I cited one given 12 years. So 12 months, which is a calendar year on the outside, but I suspect in terms of jail time, the member of parliament for the city of Bridgetown is laughing. He would tell me it is 9 months as long as it would take to born a baby. Although we are born babies earlier than that nowadays. But 9 months is recognized jail term in Barbados. The lawyers will correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I know you are a distinguished lawyer from the school that is up in Honourable. Section 28 also creates an offense where a manager or other employee of a residential facility abuses, neglects, or exposes an older person to abuse or neglect. The person commits an offense and is liable to a fine of $100,000, a term imprisonment of 5 years, Mr. Speaker, sir. 5 years, we're talking years now, not 12 months, 5 years or both. Let me repeat. Section 28 also creates an offense where a manager or other employee of a residential facility abuses, neglects, or exposes an older person to abuse or neglect. The person who commits that offense, once found guilty, can be fined up to $100,000 or 5 years imprisonment, or both. You will take your pick. Additionally, there is provision that where a person commits an offense or contravenes any provision under this act for which no penalty is provided, he shall be liable to a fine of $10,000 or a term of imprisonment of 12 months or to both. So where there is no special provision under this act and the person will commit an offense which contravenes the provision of this particular act, you can be fined up to $10,000 or 12 months imprisonment. And that is 12 months of a calendar year, 12 months that we know from January to December, as far as I understand, and the member of parliament of the city has explained to me, telepathically, of course, that the jail year is 9 months, as long as it takes to born a baby. That's what he's telling me. Section 29 speaks, Mr. Speaker, sir, to reporting to the minister by operators of residential facilities. A manager shall, within 60 days, 2 months, after the end of each financial year of the if each financial year of the residential facility submit to the minister a report on the complaints of the residential facility. Now, after a year, because every contract is given for a year for you to operate the facility, after that year has passed, you are asked and tasked by this legislation to provide a report. And that report will come within 2 months after the date of the year has passed for review. And in those 2 months' time, you have to give the report that will show that you have complied with the service standards, that you have complied with the measures as prescribed under this act, that you have done everything to prevent abuse of older persons under your care, and that there is no form of abuse for persons under your care, and the provision of any service agreement concluded during the financial year. So you have to give me everything that you have done within that year, and they have to prove it, and you have to prove it too, because the investigators, they have officers who will investigate, prescribed officers who will investigate your report to make sure that nothing has run contrary to this legislation. That's what you're saying. So before you get your facility and your contract being renewed, you have to make sure that you pass this litmus test first. This is the first order of business, and you have 2 months to get it right, or not your registration could be revoked. And that's what we are saying, because we are serious about the business of care for our elderly. Where a manager fails to submit such a report to the minister, the minister may give notice in writing to that manager where the report is not submitted within 90 days after the date of notice. So you got 90 days too. And they said the registration may be revoked after giving 1 month's notice of the intention to do so. He must state his reason for the decision. So the reason for the decision will be given as to why your license was indeed revoked, and that will be given in writing to the manager of the facility. And the minister must also give the holder of the certificate of registration for the residential facility a report and submit that report to the manager within 40 days after receipt of the notice. So after the investigations are done and the report goes to the minister and there's reason to revoke, the minister will write the manager of the residential facility and letting them know the reason for the decision, and forward that report to the manager so that he can peruse in case there's any objections to the intended action to revoke. Section 30 deals with non-compliance with conditions for registration of residential facilities, with provisions for suspension or, where necessary, revocation by the minister. And I said just now, persons got 14 days to respond after they're written with the intention to revoke. You will get a report as to the reasons why, and you have 14 days to respond. But if it's conclusive that there are indeed episodes of abuse, then you have to prove that there are not. And you have to give your reasons and your documentation. So that is as far as going in terms of section 6, my apology. Part 7, home-based care. A primary objective of the national policy on aging for Barbados is aging in a place for as long as possible once that place is healthy and it allows you to fulfill your obligations. The legislation accounts for the role of family and community, because we believe that persons would do better if they age in a familiar environment, a community that loves them, a community that they are accustomed to. Persons in St. Andrew, when they're enjoying that rustic beauty, remember Parliament of St. Thomas is shaking because she understands that St. Thomas allows that rustic panoramic view of Barbados like every place else. The farmer, that someone told me, my colleague from St. John told me the farmer. I still look at her every time I see her. I remember that because she's a septuagenarian, my heart goes out to her. And she will fall smack within this legislation as well. Probably, as I said before, is to allow persons to age in communities and environment that they would enjoy. And they're accustomed to, you don't want to put them in unfamiliar territory unless they need a right. So we are saying that home-based care must become an equal part of the conversation, because we believe that we should facilitate them in an environment that they're accustomed to. The part 7 of the bill therefore provides specific guidance for home-based care, how we are going to ensure that home-based care is at the level that this ministry and this government would want it to be. And so there are certain restrictions and information given in terms of home-based care, and I'm also tasked as minister with keeping a register of such home-based services. And the register must be confidential again, and is not therefore accessible to the public. A person who fails to comply is liable again to a fine of up to $10,000 or 12 months imprisonment or both. So you must, if you're providing home care services, you must be able to comply with the whole registration process. And if you're not going to register, you want to do it illegally, then you're subject to this fine. Part 8, confidential information. By Part 8, Section 34, protections extend to confidentiality and privacy, which are formally protected. It restricts unauthorized publication of information that could identify vulnerable adults. We are saying that we don't need to place identities and locations of persons in the public domain where we know that those persons are subject to abuse, because we may be endangering the lives of those persons. That's what it simply said. And it allows us to do our reporting internally. It allows us to carry those persons who may be abused or threatened in safe places without the full knowledge of the public where those persons' lives can be endangered. And it's simple as that. So we have to be mindful and careful how we go on our social media and take pictures and send it out there, because in an effort to do that, to highlight persons' plight, you'll be exposing vulnerable persons who are subject to predatory behavior, and that's what we are trying to avoid here. So let the officers and the authorized persons do their job in a safe manner. That's what we are saying. And you're saying that there is a mechanism to report those vulnerabilities with the executive director, a social worker. We are having a number of satellite offices across Barbados. We opened one in the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, opened one in St. Philip 6 Rose earlier. I did the second one in Oistins. There's no one for Bentham's in St. Lucie. I know the Member of Parliament will be happy to hear that. In St. Lucie, the only female parish in Barbados, there is going to be a level of fertility. So look forward to seeing that center open there. And that is Part 8. Part 9 is the enforcement. At Part 9, Section 37, the enforcement measures include powers of entry, search and seizure with police cooperation. So with the police at our side, we are going to be able to search. Enter any facility once the facility registers as a residential facility under our care and our mandate. We are going to enter, we are going to carry out investigations, we are going to ensure that there's no form of abuse, neglect, abandonment, psychological, you name it, when it comes to the protection of the elderly. So this legislation allows us, the executive director and her team, a nominee, to go with the police at any reported areas of concern and to go in uninhibitedly and do the investigations that we know need to be done to ensure the safety and protection of the elderly in this country. And it's as simple as that for me. We are there to investigate any violations, and there must, of course, we'll have some incidents, judicial warrants when required, because we are saying that if it's an emergency, that this legislation allows the police and the officers to go in without warrant. But sometimes they will have judicial warrants if needed, aiming to deter, of course, the misconduct and ensure compliance with the legislation. Penalties for providing false information or obstructing investigations will, of course, be, as I said before, this is part of the legislation, and there is a framework for arrest and detention, and that framework is specified in the legislation with the police. Under the police, of course, there has to be a police act. There will have the power to arrest, and that arrest and the whole framework for the arrest will be done subject to the police legislation. Part 10, miscellaneous. Under this part, offenses are created for Section 41, obstructing of authorized persons, namely the executive director, police officer, social worker, or any other relevant authority. And it says that the penalty of $10,000 or a period of 12 months in prison or both if persons are found guilty to obstruct those persons in carrying out their duty. For providing false documents, same thing, statements or misinformation, same type of penalty. What this bill seeks to really do is to allow persons to the responsibilities and liabilities of persons to be clearly delineated, whether in residential care, home care setting, or any other form of residential facilities. It makes persons accountable. It provides the environment. It provides the services and the quality of services, the information on the quality of services that should be rendered. So it's really a holistic approach to the management of those facilities and, of course, the lives of persons who are past the goal, are expressing the golden age of their life. It underscores the importance of proper record keeping. It says that we're supposed to keep proper records, and a person must comply. It gives the minister, of course, the authority to act within the confines of this legislation. So we transitionally, of course, we recognize that the facilities that were there before, and to grandfather those facilities, we are saying that we are going after the legislation, we are going to give them a period of 12 months to get their house in order in terms of registration, getting the facilities up to date, and the specifications, what may be needed in order to be registered. We are going to give them things, there may be physical constructs needed, etc. So we are going to give them the time to do that. And Mr. Speaker, sir, we understand, of course, and that is the last section I was going to, I was looking forward to additional sections, but I realized that I ran out of paper. Mr. Speaker, this is very serious legislation. We are here at this juncture today because, unfortunately, the type of love, support, care, and the value of life associated with those in, as we'll call it, the toilet of their years, are not being respected in the way that we would love as a government. And sometimes it is unfortunate based on what is happening in the society. I see the Member of Parliament for St. Michael East. He's smiling, but I wasn't referring to him when I was talking about the septuagenarian. I was referring to the former Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, who is smiling, who has the smile to titillate anybody's heart. And so it has a smile to titillate. But I am saying that there must be able to operate in a dimension, in a space that makes everybody smile, not only the minister who's on the floor speaking now, but every single Barbadian must be able to smile with joy and excitement based on the interactions with the elderly in this society. All this legislation does is seek to protect, ensure that we provide the adequate care, and we give them the space needed so that they can walk in this August chambers when they are past 65 and feel welcome and feel appreciated, and they can lend their voice and their knowledge to help build this country. That is what we are saying. Because we have some members in here who would fall smart on this legislation, and I'm happy to be able to represent them too. They know who I'm speaking of. What I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, this legislation is holistic in its nature. It forms part of the bigger build-out of how we are treating to those who operate in the vulnerable sector in this country. We have brought legislation to protect those in the down, the children, the child justice legislation, the child protection legislation. We brought it in the same hallowed chamber. We brought it because we felt it was necessary. Unfortunately, we had to do it because we were not obviously happy about what was happening in the society. So we had to bring legislation to bear to correct an obvious ill. Then, thanks to the Member of Parliament, who was done, I must say, a tremendous job in this ministry. And I say so with unequivocal, obviously unequivocal vocal ability, because he has done tremendous work to ensure that the vulnerable sector in this country is protected and they have a life that they can really live and enjoy in this country. And I want to say to him a fulsome thanks from all four chambers of my heart, including those that are especially reserved for the elderly population. I am happy today to be able to stand here representing not only those in the Don, but the disabled community, persons with disabilities. Legislation was brought in here to protect those persons as well. And important legislation. You heard all the plans I alluded to earlier about what we are going to do for them. And now, Mr. Speaker, today is a great day. It is the day that the Lord has made for persons over 65. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, to be able to extend my vocal cords without catching vocal fry or glottal fry today on behalf of those persons, those over 60,000 people who live in Barbados, recognizing that we are an aged society. And if we continue on this trajectory, with the healthcare plan and all the things that we are doing, maybe super aged as well. I think that we have more centenarians here than most countries in the Caribbean. The member of Parliament for St. Michael South may correct me. But I think so. Over 25% of our population or so is past the age of 60 years old. I think, based on information that was given to me, Mr. Speaker, I start by saying that, in the words of Hawke himself, age is just a number. And Niger tells us, something left in the bottle, honey. And right plastic by here, something is happening. Something happened today. I want Barbadians to recognize that this legislation speaks to the work that has been happening since 2018. Age basically for me is merely the number of years that persons will be enjoying their life and their livelihood. And it is the age that you, persons over 65, would have poured the wisdom and allowed their wisdom to shine across the left or breadth of this country. 65 years and older. An oasis of wisdom that we need to tap into as younger persons or persons under that age group. And I'm saying that candle of wisdom, that light of wisdom, should never be blanketed. Therefore, it should never be put in a basket or swept under the carpet. That light of wisdom, that oasis in this community, should be allowed to shine across the length of Barbados, bring hope and history to our people in a way that we know can allow our young people the intergenerational links to live and feel the Bajan dream. In other words, Mr. Speaker, sir, this legislation will allow those beautiful persons living in the golden years to carry their candle and light up the world. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I therefore, with those short words, ask that this legislation be read a second time.
Honourable Mr. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I rise to support the bill. Obviously, that is before the House. I also rise to say to my colleague minister that if ever there was one person that I would have preferred to bring this bill other than myself, it would have been him. There is no greater human being on earth in this regard, sir, and I want to thank him for the job he's doing as Minister of People Empowerment and for bringing this most important piece of legislation to this House. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the staff in the Ministry of People Empowerment. I still want to call them my staff, but I don't know if that would offend my good friend, the Minister. But I really want to thank the staff in the Ministry of People Empowerment because they did a tremendous job for us to be here to get this bill here. I want to thank the former Minister, as the Minister did, the former member for St. Thomas, who is now working with the Ministry, giving her solid support to the work we're doing for older persons. I also feel personally that I must thank the former head of the National Assistance Board, Ms. Colleen Walcott, for her work. And on this particular bill, I must also thank Dr. Jackie Wilcher, who I must thank and apologize, I think, because I know in the last few months of my time, I was tormenting her to make sure we get this bill finished, and she did a fantastic job to allow us to be here. I also want to thank the acting CPC then, Ms. Sean Bell, sir, who did a lot of work on this bill and the other bills that we brought to this house in the social services sector. We could not have done the work that we did without the support, sir, and I really want to thank all of them. We also owe a special debt of gratitude to the NGO sector, sir, BARP, who has been a sterling partner to the ministry, the Seroptimists, and all the other agencies that do this kind of work, sir. Those of us who spent time in the NGO sector know that it is difficult work, it doesn't pay very well, and those people, sir, would have put their heart into making sure that we made it here. Last night when I was reflecting on this bill on my drive home, a number of things came to my mind. But the one thought that stayed with me was that by Socrates, where he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. In other words, we have a responsibility to look at ourselves, where we are, reflect on what we have done, how we have done it, why we have done it. And I think the country, when it comes to older persons, finds or found itself in that situation, where we are forced to reflect upon the state of older persons, sir, to reflect upon how they have been treated, to reflect on the systems that we have built for them or the systems that we built that have excluded them in many ways, sir. And we are now forced to ask ourselves some very difficult questions. The one question that occurred to me at the various stages of even this conversation with myself was, how did we get here? Mr. Speaker, sir, how did we get here where Barbados, that was once known for its community spirit and its mechanisms of care, have now put older persons in a position where many of them feel invisible, left out, and neglected, Mr. Speaker, sir. My view is that dignity does not expire at 65 or 67. And in fact, we have a responsibility as people get to that age to put a little bit more effort in. The people who work with me know that I would always tell them, dig deeper. Just put a little bit more effort in, because this is a time where, sir, this is not about charity, this is gratitude. If a person, sir, has done something for you, you do something back for the person. That is the Barbadian way. And the bill that is before this house and the things that we are doing as a government is really a reflection of our gratitude for the people who would have served this country in the way that they have served this country. And to be able to build out a society, sir, that we would want to see, not only for older persons, because, you know, we talk about youth as if youth is a permanent situation. I was yesterday a young man, and today I don't know. See, Colin, sorry, the Honourable Member for St. Peter is telling me holding on to the desk. These things happen fast. On my 40th birthday, a good friend of mine who was 60 at the time, he said, yesterday I was 40. Tomorrow you will be 60. It goes by that fast, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so this debate is very personal to me. And those of us who would have known me know that I wrote my thesis at 21 years old, 22 years old, whatever. My master's dissertation on the rights of older persons in Barbados. It is personal to me because where I grew up, sir, there were a number of older persons who took care of me. I remember there was hardly a time where you would leave the Pine to go to school at Wilkie Cambash and somebody along the way don't want to know if you ate something. You had tea. Mr. Speaker, sir. That is the community that I came from. That is the country that we live in, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honourable Minister made the point, and I have to concur, that it is almost unfortunate that we have now to bring legislation to do what naturally came to this country, but it is what it is. And so this is our attempt, sir, to be able to fill the gap, sir, so to speak. We worked as a team, sir, night and day, I know, on a number of pieces of legislation. I feel as if this ministry has done such good work. So we brought the Child Protection Bill. As you know, we brought the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill. We brought the Social Empowerment legislation as well. We would have brought this bill to complete what I thought was the circle. But I believe, sir, that the Honourable Minister bringing it is more than just. And as he said, it is really about the stars aligning. This is his area in many ways, sir. And so I'm happy that he was able to bring it. I want to thank the Prime Minister, sir, before I go into my brief presentation, because she entrusted me at the time with this most important work and has allowed me to do something that is personal to me, but something that I have also made my academic pursuit as well as my professional pursuit, sir. So I want to thank her for allowing us to be here at this particular point in time, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so I asked the question on a number of cases, as I said, how did we get here? How did this country get to the point where we found ourselves needing to put legislation in? And this legislation, sir, did not come by a snap of the finger. We spent hours in conversations, years of consultations, discussions with all kinds of people, caregivers, family, churches, Mr. Speaker, sir. We built this legislation from the ground up, sir. People were asking for us to rush it. People said, you need to bring this legislation now, do this, do that, sir, but you have to take your time to get it right, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I believe that this legislation got it right, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also say that this legislation, sir, locates us within a much broader context for the social policy of Barbados, sir. Social policy has at its heart three main things. You have to be able to address needs, you have to be able to manage social problems, and you have to be able to create opportunities for advancement. Any proper social policy should be able to address those three things. Nobody ain't want to hear you if they want things, if they need it, and they're hungry and they ain't got nothing. So you got to address needs. If they have problems, sir, nobody can hear you over their problems. And unless you create opportunities for people to be able to advance, then all you have done, sir, is to leave that person as a victim of the state. Because that person then must be able to look after themselves. And that is what adequate social policy does. And that is what this bill, in a very unique way almost, is able to achieve, Mr. Speaker, sir. My view is that COVID showed us very clearly that older persons in this country are very vulnerable and that older persons in this country need support. In case we forgot, because, you know, people forget very quickly, but COVID made it very clear that our older population is in need of support. We saw it every day. In fact, COVID almost became an older person's exterminator, or terminator, whichever. But COVID was taking target at older persons, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so we know this, and that is why we have to be able to protect our older persons, and that is why I repeat that growing older must not mean becoming invisible in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. I say so too, as most of us now at this age, someone who's dealing with an aging parent. Most of us in this parliament, sir, being a certain age, are now dealing with parents who are getting older. We know the weight of having to carry that too, and to try to maintain a professional self while you're dealing with it. I've had DPS in my ministry, sir, who was, chipping to keep up with the pace that we were setting, but was also dealing with an older parent. I know the Deputy Prime Minister knows it well. I know it well, sir. My mother got ill during the elections, most of us. So this is a real bill, meant to address real problems for real people. And I think that is the context within which we must understand this conversation, Mr. Speaker. So this is not an academic pursuit. At the end of the day, sir, this bill is meant to address real problems that Barbadian people are facing, Mr. Speaker, sir. And how did we get here, I ask again? To the point where older persons are suffering in this country. I've seen too much of it, Mr. Speaker, sir. If the former head of the NAB would speak, she would tell you that there were many times you couldn't find a caregiver of blood relation to an older person, but let that older person die. And see the amount of family all of a sudden that pop up, especially if the person has assets, a bank account, or a house. Mr. Speaker, sir, how did we get here is the question that I feel that we have to be able to ask this question, sir. Barbados is a small place. And I know, of course, as the society has changed, families are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But people feel that their responsibility to their parents is also getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Even in families, sometimes where you have a number of children, sometimes the responsibility oftentimes falls on one person. I was at a funeral yesterday, and the priest remarked how when she showed up, the other siblings left. There's always that person. They don't mean anything by it, but the responsible person. It ends up to be the case, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we ask ourselves, how do older persons face neglect, abandonment, financial abuse, loneliness, Mr. Speaker, sir? In fact, one of the things of which I am most proud, actually, is the program that the ministry did during COVID under the Minister for the MP for St. Thomas, where they started the companion program. Because loneliness has to be one of the hardest things for older persons. In fact, when you are in jail, Mr. Speaker, sir, they put you in solitary confinement as a punishment. Loneliness is one of the hardest things for human beings who are, in fact, are meant to be social beings. And so that, Mr. Speaker, sir, is one of the greatest programs. I think it hasn't had yet its acclaim in this country, but it must. And there were young girls and young boys, mostly girls, who stepped forward, sir, without training. Most of them have training now, to offer themselves to care for older persons. It is not easy. It is not easy work by any stretch of the imagination, sir. So I want to thank all the persons who are in home help, and I want to thank all of the workers who are the companion workers, sir, because they go to work and they give 150% for this country every single day. Just ordinary women, sir, trying to do their best for older people in this country. I believe that this Parliament should recognize them, sir, for the work that they have done, sir, for what is not necessarily a very significant paycheck, Mr. Speaker, sir. But I also feel that we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here with this bill, and what I think is a reset in terms of the legislation, Mr. Speaker, sir. This bill, the minister went through it in some detail, so I won't, sir. And I really don't intend to be long, because I think he did a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker, sir. But this bill is a reset. It really is a reset. It creates the full framework for the care and protection of older persons, Mr. Speaker, sir. This bill says that older persons are right holders, and that they are not just passive recipients of government's largesse, or that they're not the victims of other people's moods. Because that's what you have. A man today might decide they want to deal with you today. I don't want to deal with you tomorrow. But this bill protects it, Mr. Speaker. So this bill gives older persons rights. It gives them access to dignity, privacy, independence, participation, community life, Mr. Speaker. So you remember during COVID, Honourable Mr. Speaker, sir, you would recall, of course, I know whenever we have a social bill, I wonder why somebody else isn't in the chair, because I always feel like I'm speaking to the converted, a man who could teach this class as a senior social worker yourself, Mr. Speaker, sir. But I remember during COVID, older persons were complaining that they couldn't go to the post office, not because they were so concerned about what it was they were going to the post office to receive, but the post office became the place where they could socialize, the place where they could meet. They know that at a certain time, so-and-so will be at that post office for conversation, communion if necessary. But they would meet and they would talk and they would have their own vibe, Mr. Speaker, sir. Community life is critical to any social being, but it becomes more critical, sir, as you become older. This bill recognizes physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, financial abuse, and it includes abuse of when people take your pensions, take your savings. Mr. Speaker, sir, this pension issue is a big one. It is one of the things where oftentimes I would go to Ms. Colleen Walcott, permit me to say, sir, she was head of NAB, and I would ask her, is there anything we can do? Is there something we can do to protect this old woman or this old man whose money is being taken? I must also warn the older men in this country. Older men in this country have a tendency to believe that they are capable of doing things that they once were able to enjoy in their youth. And I am being very honest. Mr. Speaker, sir, I came to... No, it's not about him. And perhaps, Mr. Speaker, sir, they can. I don't know. I'm talking about all kinds of things. Some members again that said, Mr. Speaker, sir, my point is, however, that we have seen a number of situations where family members are very concerned about the behavior of older men when they find themselves in a relationship with somebody who is significantly younger, and it seems to be in the impressions of the family member that the younger female is enjoying a financial relationship solely. And men have taken off all their pension, all their monies, sir. And we've often had questions, but they could not intervene. And that's a simple question, like, are you sure about this? Maybe we should step in and protect you, because at the end of the day, you will have nothing. And sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, once the person obviously is of good mind and lucid, they make their own decisions. But there are cases where they're not. And somebody has to be able to make those decisions or to help make those decisions. I figure that the state, sir, has a role to play in protecting people. I also felt very good about this legislation, sir, because this legislation allows us to move older persons we could not before. People would say, how is it that you left that older person there to suffer? Well, the law didn't allow it. And now, sir, this bill permits us to be able to move older persons, I think they call it, to a place of safety in the bill, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is a very transformative and transformational piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, sir, and it has to be recorded as such, because it will give the government and the state the opportunity to protect older people in circumstances where they may not even know that they are in need of protection, Mr. Speaker. So this bill also speaks to mandatory reporting, like the Child Protection Bill did. And we've said that they are duty bearers, sir, people who, by virtue of their profession or their relationship with the older person, has a duty to report abuse if and when they see it, Mr. Speaker, sir. Silence can no longer be used to protect abusers in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. We've also gone on to create a register of abusers. And that, to me, is such a powerful piece of this bill. It's confidential, so that the state has it. It's not going to be, you know, Barbadians are concerned that all their information is going to be exposed. It's not. It's going to be confidential, but people who need to know will know that so-and-so is capable or has already abused, better said, has already abused some older person, Mr. Speaker, sir, a register of abuse. I had a view when I was minister, sir, that perhaps we should look at something similar for children, and that we should have a register for persons who abuse children. It is something that I feel that we need to continue looking at, Mr. Speaker, sir, but this register of abusers, sir, is not a public thing. It's really just for the state at present, so that we know. So that, for example, I will not go and hire a man that I know has abused an older person to work at Sterling, for example. Likewise, I feel we should not be employing people that abuse children either. But right now, you have to rely on memory or hearsay because it's not documented properly, sir. That is one of the things of which I am happy. The facilities that we're going to be building out, Mr. Speaker, sir, are important because daily people come and ask for certain things, but we still have a lacuna in the legislation. Well, in our framework, we still have a gap, sir, that we have to fill. There are people who are not old enough to be considered geriatric care, although I don't even like that phrase, but considered for older facilities. Some who have no real disability in the sense, sir. Some who are too old to be in a child's space, sir, but who need protection. And we have to be able to do it, Mr. Speaker. So we have to look at it, sir. We have to look at our facilities for women who've been abused, women who suffer from domestic violence. We have to look at our persons with disabilities who are mid-age, sir, but there's no facility in Barbados. So I say that to say to the minister responsibles, I know he's paying a lot of attention, but those are the areas that I think we have to be able to complete if we're going to be able to say that we have comprehensive social legislation, Mr. Speaker, sir. But this bill creates, sir, the caregiver standards, and these are important things because not everybody could just go and think that they can care for all the people. There is, in law, if you're a lawyer, Mr. Speaker, sir, and you are, you have to go to training. You have to have certain skills. If you're an accountant, you have to have certain skills. If you are a chef, you have to have certain skills. It's perhaps only in the social space that everybody feel anybody could do it. Everybody feel anybody could go and look after children at Child Care Board or now the Social Empowerment Agency. Everybody feel that they could send anybody to go and look after older people. But there are skills, Mr. Speaker, sir. There are skills that you can learn, sir, and there is an attitude, because in the social space, attitude is often more important than aptitude. People have to have the right attitude for this work. I used to say to my staff, this is not just hard work, this is heart work. You put your heart in it, or you're in the wrong job, Mr. Speaker, sir. So there are a number of examples that I can draw, sir, but I want to close on transport. And if it is clear to me across the gamut of things in Barbados, you could look at health, you could look at sports, you could just name it. We do not have it right when it comes to older people, Mr. Speaker, sir. I must say here, as I said to the staff, I am a social minister in transport. I have not forgotten. And therefore, the Ministry of Transport must reflect that orientation too. I cannot be satisfied, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the roads, especially where the roads are created, some of the newer roads, we do not have enough space for people to walk. I'm not satisfied. I know some of the roads are tight, some of these spaces are tight. I have said to the ministry, y'all got to check these standards, because I know they've been arguing, as they did with the Honourable Minister, I'm sure, before me, about standards. You've got to check these standards. The standards have to be fit for a modern Barbados. They have to be spaces where people can walk and people can feel safe walking, Mr. Speaker, sir. Every time I see a crack on a sidewalk, I know that means that a person with a disability cannot cross that path. When I see a lip that is 1 inch, 2 inches at the end, you tell me that you've created a bridge for older people or for persons with disabilities, I know that is a joke, because a wheelchair user cannot get up that bridge, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I've said to the staff that we have to be able to make sure that we do better when it comes to these things, Mr. Speaker, sir. I know that if you cannot feel comfortable going to a bus stop because there is no shelter at that bus stop, there is no bench for you to sit at that bus stop, Mr. Speaker, sir, older people would stay home. And therefore, if you stay home, it means that you are not going to the doctor, Mr. Speaker, sir. If you choose to stay home, it means that you are not going to see your friend, and we've already said that that social relationship is important, Mr. Speaker, sir. If the crossings are not safe, clearly marked, properly lit at night, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are jeopardizing a significant portion of our population. I see these things, Mr. Speaker, sir, they're too big for me to ignore. Because at the end of the day, we have to create a society, sir, that is fit for the weakest of us. And I'm saying to this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, most of us are closer to the other side than we are to the farmer side, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we also, if you don't want to do it for them, and I know this Parliament has been very kind-hearted in the way it's approaching social policy, sir, but we have to be able to do it, Mr. Speaker, sir. Older persons experience transport different from the rest of us who are not yet at that age. Women experience darkness different from men. Older women experience darkness completely different from men, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I feel where there are areas where people are asked to catch a bus, you must make sure to and fro that bus stop is well lit. A nice walkway, well lit and smooth, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have said these things here, I've said it there in the ministry, sir, because getting older should not mean losing independence in these things that are so easy to be able to resolve, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also wonder about these doors sometimes. You ever catch a bus and before you get on the bus, the door closes and one squeeze, and the doors close really hard in some of the buses. They come in really fast, not in your buses, praise the Lord. But you say sometimes even in stores, You step in, and before you get in properly, the door slamming back, Mr. Speaker. So you cannot cross the road if you're an older person, you cannot cross in a hurry. If you're going to a store, you can't whistle through the door, Mr. Speaker, sir. We got to stop and check ourselves, Mr. Speaker, sir. The time has come for us to be able to reflect. Bob Marley said, open your eyes and look within. Are you satisfied with the life that you are living, Mr. Speaker, sir? I feel this country has to have honest conversations with itself. I felt so for children. I feel so for persons with disabilities, sir. We need clearer signs. We need audio announcements, sir. We need better drop-off areas at clinics. You know, I remember my mother telling me she had to go to QEH, and then at that time they weren't letting in everybody. She had to stand up outside like any other person. But if you're an old person standing outside waiting at the, first of all, a sick person standing outside a clinic, you see it still at some of the clinics? Standing outside the QEH, Mr. Speaker, sir? We have to ask ourselves, are these things right? And you know, the truth is, it's not even a policy necessarily of the government. It is the practice oftentimes of the people who work in these institutions. Or a security guard who says, I cannot give you a chair. So there's simple things. We keep talking. I heard the minister responsible for education, who I always tell him is doing a brilliant job. I hear him speaking about teaching people ethics and civics and just going back to some of those old ways. And I think that is so critical to shaping the society that we have to be able to build out, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is about public health. It is about dignity, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is about independence. And you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, while I'm on this topic before I wrap up, there is a view, I've heard it said by some, that the government is having a conversation around how we're going to partner with the private sector to be able to better offer vehicles, buses, sir. Some have said it's a privatization, they've called it a divestment, they've called it all kinds of things. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a view that this government somehow is going to put in place a system where older persons have to pay to use a bus. But let me make it clear. There will never be under this administration any time where older persons have to pay to use buses in this country. It is not the policy of the government, Mr. Speaker, sir. That free ride for older persons will continue regardless of whatever structure we settle on for delivering transport to Barbadians. But we have also to admit that the way we offer transportation now needs to be checked. That we have to do better in terms of our public transport, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so that will never be the case, sir. There's also not going to be the case where police officers and the people who ride for free now have to pay. The people who have been riding for free on buses will continue to do so, regardless of whatever structure we settle on, sir, to improve the efficiency of delivery to people, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I go back to this bill as I close. My view is protection delayed is protection denied. This bill has put us in a position, sir, where we can deliver protection to the older persons in this country who have carried this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. This bill has allowed us to respond, I think, adequately to the question, how did we get here? But we cannot stay here. I think we have to be able to go further, Mr. Speaker, sir. And this bill puts us in a position where we can go further, sir, to be able to deliver. We have to enforce what the bill allows us to enforce. We have to put in place the systems to better benefit the persons that we meant to protect, sir. I must tell you, sir, and I'm speaking now through the minister, through you, sir, to the minister, sir, and the staff in the Social Empowerment Agency, I do not believe that I have seen enough use of the child protection legislation. I have not seen enough use of the disability legislation, sir. They were passed in this parliament, and they're meant to be enforced, and they're meant to be used to protect the children of this country. They're meant to protect persons with disabilities in this country, sir. And this bill is meant to protect older persons, Mr. Speaker, sir. Use the legislation. Enforce the legislation, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I say that because I know the competency of the staff in the Social Empowerment Agency. Stay vigilant, because we could lose all of our progress quite easily. Stay vigilant. Stay on task, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so with those few words, because I could have gone on for a very long time, But with those few words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wish to say that as I began, sir, I really want to thank the Honourable Minister who is now leading this ministry. I really believe that he is by far the best person, I think, to lead this the best person to lead this ministry, not only because of this bill, though I'm sure he finds some personal satisfaction herein, but because of his heart, Mr. Speaker, sir. I know the heart of my friend. And sir, as he also said, sir, you judge a country not by the way it treats the people who are strong and best able to get by, sir, but by the way it treats its vulnerable and those who need support. And this bill allows us to do that, sir. With those few words, I am thankful.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I therefore beg to move the suspension of the House until 2 p.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be suspended until 2 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 2 p.m.